Okay. Yeah, we have had a little bit of information already from Netta about tonight's talk. And I think it's best if I just say that tonight Netta is going to be talking about Buxton, a place of hope. And I'll now hand over and mute myself. Thank you, Netta.
Thank you. Right, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, as they say, for having me. It's a very peculiar experience for me, is this, because I would much rather, as I'm sure all of you would, have an opportunity to see you face to face, and also to judge what people are thinking about what you're talking about. Which is all very difficult when you do it via this method, but I understand the reasons behind it. What I'm actually going to talk about is, as I put here, a place of hope or a safe haven in the hills. And the reason, of course, that I suppose we think of Buxton as being a safe haven is that the first thing is that it is because of its geographic location. And if we go back to the Doomsday Book, it's interesting that Buxton isn't recorded in the Doomsday, but there again, most of the northwest, and certainly as you get further up with Northumberland and so on, that's nowhere, you know, we don't hear anything about that at all. And it's simply recorded as waste. That's all it is. It's just waste. But later on, I think I think even there, it's because of its geographic location. And if we just move forward a little bit in time to Mary Queen of Scots, it really was because of the remote location that Queen Elizabeth was so worried about what was happening with Mary Queen of Scots when she came here, for example. What were they getting up to? She didn't know. It was a long way from a seat of power. So let's look at other people from there on in who have perhaps seen Buxton as a safe place to be, assuming that that is perhaps the geographic location behind it. So the next slide, please. If Simon's there. Next slide. Oh, no. Can people hear me?
Yeah, I'm trying to make it work. Sorry about that. There we go.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. This is the First World War, and I'm assuming that most of you will recognise where this is. Well, before we go on to that, hang on, we're really moving ahead. Simon. Okay, thank you. What we've got here is, with the First World War, as I say, we've got what it looks like now, what's left of this. And these are the gates to, and the gate posts to the Empire Hotel. And the Empire Hotel is significant if we look at the next slide, yeah. You can see the gates that were shown on the slide before. And why the Empire Hotel is significant is that it was one of the places in the First World War, particularly, that was used, and it was used in the Second World War as well. It was used as a Canadian dispatch centre. And what I find interesting about this is, and I don't have any real proof of whether this is the case, and I would be very interested if anyone listening to this tonight would get back to me and prove to me one way or another if they know something about it. But of course, the 9th Duke of Devonshire was in fact the Governor General of Canada. And I wonder whether, and he was there during this time of the First World War, and I'm just wondering whether he's actually said to people, hey, you know, we've got a place in Derbyshire, in Buxton. It's a bit difficult to get to. It's in the hills, it's a bit away from things. Maybe this is why it became what it became for the Canadians. If we look at the next slide, please. This, of course, is Buxton Museum. And Buxton Museum, again, was used as a Canadian Red Cross hospital in the First World War. And why I think this one is particularly significant is really because as we progress through this talk tonight, I want to make mention of some of the people who were perhaps saved in that sense by coming to Buxton at different times. And in this one, if we just look at the next slide, we can see what it formerly was. You know, if you look at that picture there, which is of the peak hydropathy, hydropathic, excuse me, I can never say that word properly. This is what it originally looked like. And you can see there in the picture, can't you, in the middle there, the bit that we can just see on the picture that we had before, on the slide before. And it was, during the First World War, a Canadian Special Red Cross hospital treating wounded soldiers. And a lot of those soldiers were people suffering from shell shock, what was called shell shock at the time. If we look at the next one, this is one of the people that I find amazing. This photograph here, and it's in the entrance that we know of as our way into Buxton Museum. We have a gentleman there in uniform. That's Frederick Banting. And it was Frederick Banting that went on to co-discover insulin. Incredible, a Nobel Prize winner. Extraordinary. Look at the next slide, please. Okay, I don't know whether you can see this one properly, but the importance of this is to do with how did people get here? How did those wounded soldiers come into the town? And the Buxton station here and the friends of the station put this little note up there to say, and I was unaware of how many it was, that 1,100 soldiers came through Buxton railway station. Let's just look at the next one. And how they came in were on these things known as ambulance trains. If you're not familiar with that, it's quite, it's horrendous, really. The ambulance trains were kind of like double deckers almost, if you can imagine, with stretchers at the bottom and stretchers at the top. And when they came into various places which had hospitals that were admitting soldiers or wounded, initially when they came in, they were greeted with a band. People would turn up at the station. There was a great deal of, isn't this wonderful? The boys are coming home. And then the realization of what was coming home and what was being returned on the ambulance trains began to sink in. And a lot of them started to come in actually at night. So people just didn't see and couldn't see what was being sent home. So very, yeah, makes you think, hey? Let's look at the next one. Thank you. And when they came in, of course, here to Buxton, they would have come into two stations which were in existence at the time. The one that you can see to the left of this, which was, we go back again, which was our existing station, and the one on the other side, which was the Midland Railway. But just think for that for a moment, 1,100 Canadian, not just Canadian, 1,100 wounded soldiers were coming through this station during the First World War. Okay, can we look at the next? Thank you. Now, this one is, some of you are probably looking at that and going, I know immediately where that is. If you don't recognise this, this is Hardington Gardens. And if I had, and I could see you all, I'd be asking whether, do you know where this is? This is Hardington Gardens. And I just want to show you, before I say anything else about this, I just want to show you the next slide, if I may, Simon. Right. So I've just put it, come on, my heritage detective. So where is this? Now, hopefully you're looking at that and you're going, I know where that is. This is Fountain Street. And on your right, you can see what would have been, what is Hardington Gardens now, going down there. What that would have been at this time the Buxton Hydro. And why this is important as a place of hope is that this is where the Granville Special Hospital, the Canadian Special Hospital, moved to again in the First World War. And the reason that it moved here, and I may just have to look at my note just to see if I've got the exact statistics on this one. Yeah, it moved in 1917 from Ramsgate. And the reason it moved was on the 22nd of August, it had been at the Granville Hospital in Ramsgate. And it moved because on the 22nd of August at 10:45, 4 bombs from 10 enemy aircraft hit the hospital down in Ramsgate, massive. And so probably because they knew several people were killed, already wounded soldiers again, and there were a lot of injured. And probably because they'd already got the discharge centre, the dispatch centre here, they decided that they would use here as a place for the wounded soldiers because it was safe. It was a place of hope. Hopefully the bombs are not going to fall here. They're going to be safe. But look at the next one. This is now the Spa Hotel. And why I've put this picture on is the Buxton Hydro, which is owned by a man called H.R.P. Lomas. He changes the name of the Buxton Hydro to the Spa Hotel after the First World War because he's paid quite a substantial amount of money because it's being used during this period of time. If we just look at the next one, please. Here's some of the staff outside of the hotel. And again, please. And this is the ballroom of the hotel. Now, I mistakenly have said to people in the past, this is where the amputations were carried out. But I've since, because it had the best light in the building, but I've since found out, which I don't have a picture of, that it was probably something called the coffee room within the building. But the point being that this hotel was huge. It was already huge. It's expanded after the First World War by Lomas because he has got a lot of money that's come in. So basically the picture that you saw before of Fountain Street, he bought up most of the property along there with the money that he was given from having the Granville Hospital. And we'll look at the next one, please. Now, this is the other side of Hardington Gardens, Milton Court. Now, I've only just noticed that I've actually managed, I'm terrible with taking pictures, and I've not improved from the days when I had a Brownie camera. Nothing has improved. Just noticed that I've still managed to get my finger up at the top there in the, so forgive that, apologies about that. But this is Milton Court. If I can look at the next one. Right, just put what's missing. We're on the Broadwalk now. So just think down here, folks, for a second. If you notice there's a space just past these two women walking down, there's a space. That space is where Milton Court was, is now rather. And what was there before were the tennis courts of the huge, what became the Spa Hotel. So it was the whole of the way down from the marketplace, all down Fountain Street, right down there, Hardington Gardens, across the road, and into what became, as I say, the tennis courts at the other side there. So during the First World War, this area here, and particularly the Granville Hotel, Granville Hospital, is being occupied by massive amounts of Canadians. Can we look at the next picture, please? Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom. It wasn't all amputations and things like that. Why I've put this picture on is because the gentleman here, this is a wedding. And the gentleman here is a Canadian soldier who is getting married to a Buxton lady next to him there. And in some of the work that we've done over the years with Discover Buxton, we've collected a lot of oral testimonies. And I spoke to a lady called Mrs. Lomas, part of Lomas Foods. And I went out to speak to her, and she told me a quite extraordinary story about her mother. Her father had died some time ago, and then her mum dies, and they're looking through, when father dies, first of all, they're looking through his things. And they'd been married for, mum and dad there have been married for 60 years, 70 years. And he's never mentioned at all anything about a Canadian soldier, nothing. And when he dies, mother finds in a box some letters from just after the First World War or around that time to say, I'm going to send you some money. And what it turns out to be is that the father had been brought up, as many people were, by a maternal grandparent at the time, because the shame was so great, because of course this young girl had got pregnant by a Canadian soldier. And so Mrs. Lomas had gone looking over in Canada. She got hold of the Canadian War Diary people, and it became apparent that there were quite a number of Canadian soldiers who left, in a sense, something behind in Buxton, which is maybe a reason why things changed and became only married men were allowed to come, who were and to the dispatch centres over here, which was different from how it had been at the beginning of the war, which I find quite interesting. Can we look at the next one, please? And these two I've just put in for interest, really. This is just to show you the number of soldiers who were here during the First World War in different shapes or form. And the next one, please. Thank you. And again, here. We don't really need to discuss this in terms of what we're talking about this evening, about the safe haven, but it's just looking at the number of people that are here, and also to say, I suppose that it was found or considered safe enough for people to be carrying out these bridge building exercises. Okay, can we see the next one? And I had to put this in, of course, because this is Vera Brittain, and her part of the town is important. Excuse me, particularly her work here in the First World War. And although she goes on to the front from here, I don't know whether any of you are aware of this, but I find this particularly interesting. The Royal, what was the Royal Exchange Building, which now hosts things like Track and Trail in Buxton on Spring Gardens there, and was formerly the Royal Hotel. That was one of, I think, the first Red Cross VAD training centres, voluntary aid detachment nurse centres. And it's very likely that Vera Brittain went there to do her training prior to going to the front. So another thing that was going on here in the town. Okay, can we look at the next one, please? Now, by the time we get to the Second World War, again, Buxton is being used to house wounded soldiers. And this is maybe, oh, for goodness sake, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to close the door. I'm having a lot of people trying to ring through for some reason. Okay, sorry. I hope you can't hear that, but we'll carry on. And it became a safe haven for families escaping the bombing in both Manchester and London. Now, many of these families were Jewish. Now, what I don't know is quite why, again, Buxton is chosen, but I can only assume that it's because of the geographic location and the consideration that it would be away from the cities, people would be safer. So people started to come here. So if we can just look at the next one. Right. Now, I'm not expecting anybody to know immediately where this is. Just have a close look at that. Where it is Macclesfield Road. This is 24 Macclesfield Road. Can we have a look at the next one? And now this is taken from the side. So why this is significant in what I've been looking at or researching is because this is 24 Macclesfield Road, and it's mentioned in some oral testimony that is given by a woman called Irene. And she gives this testimony to Yvonne Chalker, who wrote a marvellous book called Buxtonians, a Hardy Breed. And if you've not read it, please, please, please go and get it and have a read of it, because it's excellent. And in that, Irene refers to this as Collingswood. So, but she says it's 24 Macclesfield Road. So a couple of weeks ago, absolutely pouring with rain, I decided that I'd go looking for this. So I go looking, and why I've taken it from the side here is apparently the back of this house here is, it was much bigger, if in the sense that this was a, there is a determination by somebody to get through to me, but I will turn that one off as well. And the back of this was sold off because this used to be land that went right down to the river. So this bit to the side here would have been the route through, if you want, and it would have been the driveway of the big house. Now, this house, when I went up and had a look at it, it's now called Collingswood. So I don't know whether it's the same house that Irene is referring to, but this is a house that she goes to stay with her family when they are evacuated. And they have some very, very interesting people who came to stay with them. Can we look at the next slide? This man. Now, I just need a moment there because I just find this extraordinary. From what I can gather, Hein was a friend of the family, and he was a friend of Raymond, who was a medical student at the time. And he'd also been involved in the Arab Revolt, which had been pre to the Second World War. And he then joins the British Army. Now, interestingly, he joins the Intelligence Corps. He was born, by the way, in Ireland, and his father was the chief rabbi in Ireland. And he was in Matlock. Now, what he was doing in Matlock, what he was doing with the Intelligence Corps in Matlock, who knows? But certainly 24 Macclesfield Road was interestingly hosting some really quite important people. Can we look at the next one, please? Now, again, I hope, heritage detectives, that you're looking at that and going, yes, I know where that is, I know where that is. This is Oddfellows Hall. It's just off the marketplace. And this was in, during the Second World War, this was used as a synagogue. Now, the other synagogue, but again, oral testimony, because unbelievably, there were two synagogues. Now, the bit that we have on the second synagogue is it was that, and I think that it was on Dale Road, and I think that it's where there is an Indian restaurant on the corner. And I think that that was where the other synagogue was, down there. It was either there, because in the oral testimony we've taken, it says that when the man returns, and remember, we're talking to quite elderly people quite often, and memories get distorted and changed. He said when he came that it was a Chinese restaurant. Now, the only Chinese restaurant on Dale Road is the other end, isn't it, by London Road? So maybe it was there, but I genuinely don't know. But the fact that there were two in the town seems to me to be quite extraordinary, really. And altogether, we think that there were in the region of 300 families who were here in the town during the period. And so what happened, I don't know what my next slide is, so I don't want to just rush on. I won't give you the next one because I think I need to spend a moment just explaining where this fits into what is happening with this idea of the safe haven. Back in 2017, as some of you'll know, I run a business called Discover Buxton Tours. And not unusually, I got a phone call from somebody saying we're a group of 12 who are coming to the town, and we wondered whether you could give us a talk. And we are a group of Jewish women. Now, it just so happened that I had done back in 2017, I had met with a lady called Gillian Mawson, who I think might be my next slide. Can we just have a look? Oh no. Right. This is taken from the Buxton Advertiser, and it's just giving you a bit at the time. We are asked to inform Jewish readers that under the auspices of the Buxton Hebrew congregation, services will be held on New Year, Saturday and Sunday, the 12th and 13th, at Peak Buildings Terrace Road, and also on Monday of the following week, the Day of Atonement. Services during the festival of the Tabernacles will be held at the Old Fellows Hall as usual. Jewish members of the forces staying in Buxton during the holidays are invited to apply to Mr. J.N. Jackson, Oddfellows Cottages, Buxton, so that reserved seats shall be allocated to them. So this is just to show that these were things that were regularly appearing in the Advertiser throughout this time for these 5 years. And let's look at the next one, please. Yeah, okay. This is what I was saying about Gillian Mawson. So back in 2017, this is Whitehall, which is obviously up on Manchester Road. And I'd got in contact with Gillian because she'd written some fantastic books about the Guernsey evacuees who'd come to Buxton during the Second World War. So I met with Gillian up at Whitehall and heard the story of the Guernsey evacuees. So when I meet with this group of 12 women, I've also spoken and asked Yvonne Chalker if she'd like to come along as well to meet them, because we got all of this, we got a fair amount of information that we were gathering together about what had been happening, particularly from the Jewish point of view during the war. So we meet with these women and we tell them the story as far as we understand it. And one of the women in the party is a lady called Jo Briggs. And Jo Briggs just happened to be the editor of the Association of Jewish Refugees, which is a magazine that's been published for 80 years. Now, I didn't know that. So after we'd had this meeting, all 12 of them were absolutely fascinated by this story. They said they didn't know anything about it at all, about, how the history of Buxton in terms of Jewish evacuees. And the discussion went on a bit wider. And Jo and myself placed an advert in the Jewish Chronicle. And what we put in there was to ask if anybody had any memories, if they'd like to be in contact with us, that would be great. Because part of what I'd understood from a lady called Judith Finiskin was that her sister, a woman called Laura, had come, her foster sister had come in on kinder transport. So I put the advert out there, we put the advert out there, and I got contacted by a gentleman who said, I am really interested in this story. He said, because we keep a record of the children who came in on the transport. As far as we know, we have nobody that's listed under that. And so as a consequence of that, we actually found, if you want, this woman who hadn't been recorded, and she went down on that list as well. So I didn't think any more at this time about what we'd spoken about to Jo and her friends at that time. And I went about doing my work and trying to find out more about the history of Buxton, wanting desperately to return to finding out more about this, but other things taking precedence at the time. And during the summer, I got a message from Jo Briggs, and she said, hello, very breezily, do you remember me? And I said, yes. And she said, we are going to plant this year 80 trees to commemorate 80 years of the Association of Jewish Refugees, and also to acknowledge the Platinum Jubilee of the Queen. And we would very much like Buxton to be one of the places that is selected to have an oak tree, because we've never forgotten you giving us the information that we heard on that day. And we feel it would be really, really appropriate. So I thought, right, okay, that is fantastic. How wonderful. It is part of the rich history of Buxton that we should be celebrating. Then I realised that it was only me who was the local organiser, and that I was suddenly going to do this, really. So very quickly, we've put together a small ceremony, really, and on the 1st of December, and everybody, I hope that you'll come along and witness it. I don't see why we can't have as many people as possible to come along and see this. But on the 1st of December at 1 p.m, we're planting a tree in the Serpentine Walks. As you come over the bridge from the Pavilion Gardens, you're coming over, it's going to, you take the right-hand path, and it's in the field that's there on the side there, and that's where it's going to go. And each of the trees, 80 in all, are sponsored by a person who came on the Kinder Transport. And the family who have sponsored the Buxton tree are the family of a man called Herbert Rindle. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to his children recently, who are going to come along on that day, obviously. And what happened with Herbert was that he came in on the very last train from Vienna. And forgive me if I get upset about this, because I just find these stories quite amazing. Earlier on, I mentioned Frederick Banting to you, who was the co-discoverer of insulin. Of the 10,000 children who came in on Kinder Transport, 4 of them became Nobel Prize winners. Now, the statistics of that are phenomenal, I think. The fact, so those people who were saved at that time, they've gone on and they've had their families, and more of this in a second. So Herbert is, and this family, the Rindle family, he did not get evacuated to Buxton. He gets evacuated to Blackpool. But the reason that the tree is here in Buxton is because he marries a local woman, and they have living relatives that are here in Buxton. And throughout their childhood and with their father, they remember coming to Buxton very, very regularly. So that is why they're very happy for the tree to be planted here. And in fact, what happened to Herbert is really quite sad, because he was only in Blackpool for a very short period of time, because he had some other relatives that were here in this country, not here in Buxton, but he went to them, and they had lost, he was 8, by the way, when he came, and they had lost an 8-year-old child. And who knows, why, but I think perhaps they thought that Herbert would be in some way, would fill that space. And it wasn't like that. He wasn't the child they'd lost. And so he had a pretty miserable time. And he was pretty soon sort of out on the streets almost. Incredibly, he went on and he became a physicist. He did pure maths and he taught at Birmingham for years and years and years. So when I was putting this together, I now heard a little bit of Herbert's story, and I was conscious of the fact that I wanted to get somebody, if I could, who was Buxton and had an experience here in Buxton. And Alan Roberts had mentioned to me a man called Herbert Eisner, who became, I think, the director of Health and Safety Mines Research, as it was. And he came here to Buxton from Berlin to Buxton College. Dates are a little bit weird, but he probably came about 35, 36. And he came and he eventually settled here. He met a woman who had come in on kinder transport, who went to Stockport, and his children were brought up here in Buxton. And on that day, on the 1st of December, I have his son, David Eisner, who is a professor of cardiology at Manchester. And again, speaking with him, you say to yourself, my goodness, if Herbert hadn't come out, if he'd not been, because as David said to me, his parents had seen the writing on the wall, they got him out, they got them out early. But he said, we wouldn't be here. There's 4 of them, 4 of those children. And it doesn't matter whether people have had glittering careers or they've not had glittering careers. In the case of the Eisners, they are glittering. But the point being is that they just wouldn't have existed. They wouldn't have been here. And so 2 things, since this is happening and we are as part of the safe haven, which is Buxton, we had other people who have memories of taking people into their houses. And the sad thing is that a lot of these have unfortunately died. So it's whether I can get their children to speak, which is what I'm hoping to be able to do. But almost all of the families who took people in, they have had contact with those families throughout their lives. So that is extraordinary. And I've had, since there's been a little article in Pure Peak, and since that article went in, I've had a couple of people contacted me, and one of them is a man down in Bakewell, Alan, and he just said, I don't know, oh, forgive me. Oh dear. I don't know whether it's all right for me to come. But I'm so pleased and honoured that somebody is remembering my sister. I'm 78, so says the man. He said, I'm not, I was born here, I think he says, but my sister used to talk about it and used to say, Derbyshire people saved our lives. And then, and I don't know whether she's listening, as I was panicking about holding this thing on Zoom tonight, I got an email from Viv Marriott. And I think many of you will know Viv, and she's unfortunately in hospital at the moment. She's not very well. but she said, I believe that you're giving a talk. And she said, I don't know whether you know, but my father came in on the kinder transport. And when he used to come and see me in Buxton, he always used to look around to see whether he could recognise things, but he didn't ever want to talk about the experience itself. So if we just look at the very last slide I've got, this one is nothing at all to do with what I've been speaking about.
Sorry,
Oh,
I'm
heck.
still not
Oh,
sure about
dear.
that.
Hang on, this is my phone now speaking to me as well.
Sorry,
and
I'm still not sure about that.
I'm not sure about it either, Siri. Hold on. I've buried it. Right. So this is just a picture of the Guernsey Evacuees, and they're up here at Whitehall. And when we have the tree planting on the 1st of December, I've asked Gillian Mawson if she will come along and just speak for some of these people as well, because not just here, this is the senior school that are here, but they're here throughout the war years of the Second World War. And the junior school are at Great Hucklow. And Elizabeth College in Guernsey is where they're all from. And one of the people who used to drive the tram, a gentleman called Fred Rolland, is a Guernsey man. And he amazingly went to Elizabeth College. And when he was there, he had an old schoolmaster who used to teach geography. And they were shown a map which had all of these contour lines. And when he came to Buxton, one of the things that he went to look for was this place, and where of course it was this whole area. And his master had remembered the area where he was kept safe during the Second World War, and was then showing the boys in years after this area of the Peak District. And so Fred had made a journey up there and gone and looked at it on behalf of his old master when he first came. So the stories of Buxton as a safe place, as a safe haven, whether these are because of its geographical location, or whether it's because of the warmth and hospitality of its people, or a combination of both. But whatever way we look at, it's a very fabulous place to live, and we're very lucky to be here. And that actually concludes what I want to say tonight, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able, if possible, to take some questions.
Thanks very much, Netta. That was an absolutely fascinating talk, and
Thank you.
I'm sure everyone here would like to show their appreciation, even if we just do that. Thanks. Well done, everybody. So, Simon, can people unmute themselves?
Yeah, the best thing to do.
Talk?
I think the best thing to do, if people have got a question, if they want to use the hand raising facility at the bottom, people know how to use that. So you can raise your hand.
Oh yeah, I can see one that has come up at the top.
It was me just showing you how
Oh,
to.
oh right.
And then I'll point out that then you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll have a bit of a sort of a shouting match. So, yeah. So I think Pat's got a question. Pat.
It's not a question, it's an observation. Okay. I don't know if people remember the Hungarian refugees we had here in the 1950s. I was at Burbage School, and we had a lot of children who were sent over from Hungary because of the communist takeover there. They fled, the families had fled here. They were staying at the Spa Hotel on Fountain Street. and the children went to local schools while they were here. And we had about 10 or so children in our class at Burbage. And I remember my parents inviting these children over to our house. And of course, we couldn't speak Hungarian and they couldn't speak English. And we were all out of toy box, so they all rummaged through there. And it was amazing how we could communicate. And one particular girl was perhaps a bit older and a bit brighter, but she was sort of acting like an interpreter. So we managed more or less somehow to communicate. So that was, I always remember that. But I think eventually these families were eventually moved to Canada. They were only en route to Canada in this country. So they were just here for a short time, but perhaps some people remember them.
Oh, thank you, Paps. Thank you.
Hannah Jacobs, you got a question, I think.
Good evening. It's a husband speaking.
Oh, right. Sorry, I do apologise.
It's absolutely fine.
I haven't got my
You
glasses
look
on.
marvellous, Hannah.
Netta, that was I was incredibly impressed because I'm a Mancunian, although I now live in London, and spent many happy days in Buxton. In fact, the organisation for which I work, the Reform Synagogues, used to hold their annual conferences at the Palace Hotel.
Yes.
Yeah, but I was particularly interested, I'm a trustee of the Jewish Historical Society, to learn of the community, the Jewish community, and I checked in my Jewish yearbooks. The 1941 says, the 1941 says, there is no organised congregation, but services are held regularly at Somerford House, Terrace Road, and communication should be sent to Mr. H. Hoffman at that address. But by 1945, it was obviously a well-organized community because it defines itself as a Hebrew congregation. It says services are held on Friday evenings at 4 Lower Hardwick Street and on Saturdays, as you called us, at the Old Fellows Hall on Market Street. They actually,
I'm right.
Yeah, you got it right. No, I didn't doubt that. But also, there was a rabbi there, a Rabbi Lapian. There was a chairman and obviously an organizing committee made up of Mr. Oster, a warden who managed the services called Mr. Gurvich. The treasurer was a Mr. Bishop. The honorary secretary was M. Himes, who lived in Coningsby on Macclesfield Road. Must be a house name.
Yeah.
And they even went as far as to have auditors, M. Cohen and R. Kessler, which shows a degree of organization of a community.
It does indeed, yeah.
And below that, there is a mention of a Women's Zionist Society, whose honorary secretary was Mrs. H. Offstein, OSFTEIN, 10 Level Lane, Burbage.
Oh, fabulous. Can you get this to me? Can you get some of this to me, this information?
I would think I probably can, yes.
Brilliant.
I think we've got an email for you, Netta, because the invitation to your lecture this evening was given to us by a mutual friend. So obviously there is an email there. And whilst we're talking Derbyshire, if I may just add a personal note, I'm the president of the Jewish Genealogical Society. And for 60 years, my paternal grandfather walked in Derbyshire with his friends. And at or very near Edale, there is a Jacob's Ladder.
Yes.
On Jacob's Ladder, there is a dedication to my grandfather for his 60 years war. So, so I have, as soon as I heard about Buxton, I thought, oh, well, I'll see what the lady's got to say.
Got to be. Hey, fantastic.
So Netta, I will forward you that information. I'll make sure you.
Thank you.
No,
and I know you're not called. What are you called then if you're not called Hannah?
Oh, I'm called David.
Hello, David. Hi.
I'm called David. That's Hannah.
Hello, Hannah.
I was interested I'm a Londoner, and we once came to Buxton. I absolutely adored it and really enjoyed it.
Come
So,
again, go on one of our tours.
I will next time.
Thank you, Netta, and thank you, the team who obviously put this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions, anybody? Steve, yeah. Steve Bradshaw. Do you want to unmute yourself, Steve?
No.
It's okay, Steve. Do you want to? No. I think it's.
Oh.
That sounds like it's at a rock concert or something, but.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, Steve.
While Steve's trying to sort his sound, has anyone else got any other questions? Anybody else? No. Okay. Mike, do you want to?
Well, isn't it fascinating that?
Oh, sorry, Jerry. Sorry, Jerry Northam's got a question, I think. Yeah, sorry,
Jerry.
Mike. Jerry's got a.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
It's a different part of World War II history, but my parents worked for His Majesty's Customs in London. And on
Right.
the third day of the war, they were evacuated to the Palace Hotel, which became the headquarters of their branch of HM Customs during the war.
Yeah.
And
right.
they were billeted around the town in a number of places. And
Yeah.
while they were here, they met and married.
Oh.
Had my brother and my sister, and I think I must have been conceived here, but they'd gone back to London before I was born.
Oh, that's great. And I forgot to mention, of course, Norwich Union came and they set up at what was the Spa Hotel in the Second World War, because it was considered safe to be, and that was a huge undertaking when they came there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah, managed to do it finally. I'm on the work computer, and so I've got a work computer and a telephone running at the same time. So
I'm getting quite a lot of feedback, Steve.
I've switched my phone off. So it should be. Is that okay now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
I switched my phone off because I lost the chat halfway through the presentation, so I put my phone on. So I was two devices. Apologies, Netta. What I wanted to say was at the festival this year, the Buxton Festival, Matthew Paris did a talk, and this is concerning his book is called Fracture, and his theory is that some of us who have horrendous early life experience come through that and succeed far beyond that which would be expected. So this is going back to your observation about the 4 Nobel Prize winners in the Kindertransport. And I would commend the book. It was just that aside, really. He does a radio program which is about great lives or special lives. And he noticed this in all these people he's been interviewing over the years, how common it is that whatever they succeed in life, they've had a horrendous upbringing.
Yeah.
The book is fascinating.
Yeah.
With sort of, there's about, I don't know, perhaps a dozen or so stories, and then another 40 or so vignettes of mini stories backing it up. And certainly that, I think, fits very, very closely with this incredible resilience and fortitude and amazing success in this comparatively small number of people. And certainly just again as an aside, when I'm a semi-retired medic, and the very first job I did in 1984 was at Crumpsall Hospital, which is North Manchester General, which in those days, as you would expect, had many Jewish patients, and it also had lots of Eastern European patients with horrendous backstories of being co-opted in the German army, co-opted in the English army, disenfranchised at the end of the war. Virtually every other person appeared to have experienced a horrendous time. And so thank you for the talk, because it took me straight back to that experience as a 24-year-old of these guys, you know, who were only in the mid-60s then, with that aged story, and it's so moving.
Yes.
But of those, equally, one of my consultants who taught me 6 languages, absolutely brilliant Jewish guy from Eastern Europe, and he was just, and his brother was a consultant at in America at one of the very posh hospitals there, the Johns Hopkins. And they just, again, you know, have come from horrendous early life and just done fantastically in life, and wonderful men. You know, absolutely wonderful men. So thanks for you know, sharing the whole story. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers, Steve. I think I can't see any more other questions, Mike. Should we get people to unmute and give a round of applause to?
Well, could I just say?
Of course you can, yeah.
I think what's happened tonight, we've seen a story of Buxton and how Buxton's history and its own story is enriched by the people who were born beyond our shores but found a welcome here.
Yes.
And, it really is astonishing to see how well some of them went on and made a difference to millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
So I think it's really been fascinating tonight. And thank you, Netta, and thank you, everyone. And as Simon said, if you want to unmute and give a little clap for Netta. Thanks ever so much. And
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and good night. Safe journey home, everybody.
Safe journey.
Yes, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Netta.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Simon.
Bye.
Thanks, Netta.
Oh.
We don't want to go. Get the
No.
out.
Viv was there, Netta.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she's
Oh.
muted at the moment, but
Oh, good.
yeah.
Nice
Good.
one, Netta. You did us proud.
Hey, thank
Well
you.
done. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Bye. Are you able to come? Are you able to come?
I don't think I'm going to be able to, which is sad. I would like to have been able to change where I've got to go, but I don't think I can change it.
No.
And I will be with you in spirit.
I know you will. Thank you. Thank
And
you.
well done.